Your mom's story when she was in El Salvador. We talked about your dad a little bit. So he was forced into war as a teenager. First of all, can you explain what were the two sides? What side was your dad on?
Yeah, so basically the war started in 1979, 1980 it started, and Salvador wasn't in a good place. And the war started when we had these, they call them Los Guerrillos, which is the guerrillas. And these were leftist rebels that they wanted to overthrow the government. So you had these leftist rebels gaining momentum. The reason why this is also important is because the USSR was playing a huge role because they were funding the leftist movement in El Salvador.
Oh, so the rebels against the government.
Yeah, so right when this started, Jimmy Carter was president of the United States. So Jimmy Carter's seeing what's happening in El Salvador. He goes, we might need to get involved. And the reason why this is also important in context is because the United States was already going through a Cold War. So we have the Cold War. We're seeing what's happening in El Salvador, this kind of turmoil. Nicaragua in 1979 actually fell to a communist regime, the Sandinistas. So Jimmy Carter is saying, we have a huge problem because Nicaragua just fell to leftist government, El Salvador is going that way, and Cuba was fully Soviet. So now, and then the Soviet government started to also invade into Afghanistan. So for the United States, El Salvador became a huge area of concern. That's when President Ronald Reagan comes in 1981, and he puts El Salvador as a top foreign policy, and that's when the United States starts to get involved. My dad was on the Salvadoran government side. So my dad was actually getting trained by American soldiers. Ronald Reagan funded that side. So then that's when the United States said, hey, if we don't at least help the Salvadoran government, this is going to have two Soviet countries in Central America, and we're basically coming to the doorstep of the United States. So Reagan started funding it. So my dad, at the age of 13, 14, forced into the army, started to be trained. And then my mom lived in these small villages in San Miguel where a lot of the fighting was happening. She would tell me that the leftist groups would come in, the guerrillas would come in, and they would pull out men from the homes and kill the men in front of the families. They would do beheadings in front of the people to scare them off and say, you better not join the Salvadoran forces. For my mom, it was a common thing. Back in the day, like for an 8-year-old or 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl, she had a lot of responsibilities. She would watch over her siblings, she cooked. She was kind of an assistant to her mother. So my mom was very young, but she had almost the responsibilities of a grown woman. She would tell me that when she would walk to the grocery market or check on the farms, they would see just human heads on the side of the roads, dead bodies. They said it was a common thing that they would see these kind of huge spikes on the road, and they would be heads on top of the spikes. And she said they were just so used to it. It wasn't even like it wasn't shocking anymore. So it was interesting to hear my mom's story. A big thing, my mom tells me that the thing that she remembers every night was she would put my uncles and my aunts to sleep, and they would have to sleep on the floor. They couldn't sleep on the bed because there would be gunfire throughout the night, bullets flying through, and it was like this every single night. And then my dad had the other experience of being someone forced into the war. Till this day, there's certain things me and my dad can't talk about because the memories are just too dark. My dad did tell me that he suffered from PTSD right after the war. He says he still has those moments, but not as often now. So it was a dark, moment for both of them. And they both had different, like I said, different stories. My mom was like small village, seeing her village getting taken over, death squads coming in, killing innocent people in front of them. And then my dad being part of the Salvadoran government that was getting funded by the U.S. So it was an interesting perspective when you hear both of those stories.
Yeah, you hear young people, especially today in America, they complain about the smallest, minute things. And trying to explain to them that there's real serious suffering going on around the world and what we go through really just doesn't match up at all. That is a really good story for them to hear.
Yeah, and another thing a lot of people don't know, and one thing that my dad mentioned to me, he said, Jorge, when it comes to war doesn't respect age. And what he meant by that is, what people don't know about the Salvador Civil War is for the side that my dad was fighting, which was the Salvadoran government, 80% of the troops were under 18. On the leftist side, 20% of the troops were under 18. So this was actually a civil war that was fought with a lot of children and teenage soldiers. So that's one thing that my dad mentioned. He said, hey, I would meet a 7-year-old, and that 7-year-old would be acting like a 23-year-old, meaning that like he already had responsibilities, he already had an objective. And like I said, he told me, he said, war doesn't respect age. And I think that's a thing that people forget about the Salvadoran war is the amount of children and teenage kids that fought in it.
Wow. Okay. Now, what I'm also picking up is the difference between that masculine experience and the feminine experience of war and of struggle. I mean, your father's a child basically and gets sent off to war. Your mother is still a child, taking care of the kids, protecting them from bullets and all the violence that she's surrounded in her hometown. So it's interesting to see that contrast there. But I am really glad that they made it here. Hey guys, it's Morgan. Thanks so much for watching the Freedom Records. Do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so that you get notified when new content comes out. Thanks so much.